Welcome to this video regarding lifestyle expenses. And so this is going to be an important one because I honestly believe that especially people my age until their 30s have a very hard time comprehending the idea of limiting your lifestyle expenses and maximizing for your future specifically. So this is basically going to break down exactly all of the principles that you need to have when it comes to understanding how much you should be spending on your lifestyle. And then we're going to go to the board and I'm going to explain exactly what are the different stages and thought processes that you should have based on what kind of income that you personally have. Spending on your lifestyle is just like cashing in on your checks, right? So cashing in on your lifestyle essentially, right? So for example, you've got a ton of money and you use that money to cash it in and live your life. And so what you really need to understand is that the more you cash in, the more you're living right now, the more you're enjoying yourself right now. But on the other hand, that is also taking away from your future. So say, for example, you're a young person, and although you also might be someone in your 40s or 50s, you still want to have that mindset of focusing on the future, not being as materialistic as you possibly can, but having the mindset of trying to compound your money. So since you're in up credit, you're probably someone that wants to focus on increasing your net worth, becoming a multimillionaire, compounding your money. And so you can never, ever compound your money if all that you're doing is spending all of your money renting a lifestyle and living paycheck to paycheck. And so the very interesting thing is that a lot of people might be misconstrued when it comes to someone's lifestyle, where someone technically making 5 to 10K a month could be living the same lifestyle as a wealthy billionaire. Just like how Warren Buffett right now, he's driving some old car, some Cadillac car in a 600K house. Some other person making much less income and has much less of a net worth could be actually living much more of a lifestyle than a billionaire. Now, in my honest opinion, I wouldn't be living like Warren Buffett if I was a billionaire at his point, but that's just his personal decision. But the main thing is realizing that multimillionaires and billionaires got to their point in life of having tons of wealth because they were smart when it comes to spending money given the income that they have, right? So especially when they were at those low points, they were frugal. They had different mindsets given the spot that they are in their lives, because at some point these millionaires and billionaires might have needed to spend tons of money on investments, tons of money on other things such as a rental property because they need to live in a specific place, or maybe spending money on an office. So how do you actually navigate understanding how to spend your life expenses? The underlying principle is especially that when you are below when it comes to your income, when you're low in your net worth, the less you spend on your lifestyle, the more you're giving yourself opportunity to grow in the future, right? The more you spend on your lifestyle, the more you're taking away from your future. But before we break it down on the board, I just want to give you guys a personal experience when it comes to how I was spending my money. I don't want you to misconstrue spending money on your lifestyle versus spending money on yourself. Spending money on yourself is more of an investment, and I'll give you a little example right now. Spending money on your lifestyle would include things such as your food, your shelter, and transportation. The basics, as well as things such as going to the gym and things that will make you more healthy and more optimized. Now, I want to give you a little example. When I invested in myself when I was at a very young age, technically you can tell yourself that, JP, you're making 2 to 5K a month and you spent over half your net worth on specific mentorships. I don't consider that life expenses. I don't consider that lifestyle expenses. So you have to make sure you understand exactly where are you coming from. If you're investing in yourself, then you're probably expecting a return. Now, lifestyle, specifically lifestyle expenses, generally, there's no return on investment. So now let's break it down on the board and I'll explain to you exactly what these ratios actually mean. So if you look at income over here, you've got 0 to 2K per month. Right now, if you're making 0 to 2K per month, this is how you should be thinking. You should be only spending 50% of your money on your lifestyle. So that means if you have a job that's paying you 2K a month, then ideally you should be only spending maximum $1,000 a month on your actual lifestyle. So that would mean probably going back to your parents' house, not paying for rent, not spending lavishly in that sense. Your mindset should be of frugality. Same thing if you're making between 2K to 5K a month. You should be only spending 50% of your money on your actual lifestyle. That includes, of course, your rent, your food, your wellness, your living, going to the gym, things of that sort. And again, the mindset should be frugality. You should not be overspending on yourself in that sense. And over here you'll see I put a red line. And the reason why I put a red line is that as you breach this way of making income, then you can actually kind of get a bit more comfortable in that sense and open up doors when it comes to things such as networking, maybe going to better restaurants, maybe going and spending on a steak instead of ground beef, spending money on things that make your wellness higher, as well as potentially getting your own place and actually starting to live an independent life. Now the thing is that if you're between 2 to 5K a month, you can technically still get your own rental place. I'm not against that, but if you really want to compound your money, at this point, if you're in the red zone, and I call this the red zone, if you're in the red zone, you really, really, really need to have that frugality mindset, because every single dollar that you're making right now means so much to your future. The more you save right now, and this doesn't mean saving like just putting it in a bank account, right? We're going to talk about how you should move the rest of that 50% of the money, including over here as well. We're going to talk about that. But right now, you should not be spending more than 50% of your income on your actual lifestyle. So now let's get into the higher income level. So essentially, if you're making between 5 to 10K a month, you should only be spending 30% of your income on your lifestyle. And that means you're still having that essential mindset. And I just want to kind of like link to you guys on one of the books that I read recently, which is called Essentialism. If right now you're having a hard time understanding what do you actually need in life, what are the things that will actually make you go forward, then I would recommend you to read this one book. And I actually have a nice quote that I want to show you guys quickly. And so the quote goes like this: a non-essentialist thinks almost everything is essential. For example, someone that's making between 2K a month, they're spending money on their car, they're spending money on their house, they're spending money on their gym membership, they're spending money on their food. A non-essentialist thinks almost everything is essential. An essentialist thinks almost everything is non-essential. And so ideally you want to become a essentialist. You want to go and operate your life with the least amount of things, with the least amount of complexity. And this is really how billionaires and multimillionaires think. How can I do more with less? The less you have, the less complicated your life is. And so you got to be honest with yourself at this point. Do I really need a car? Do I really need to be spending on an iPhone 15 right now? Do I really need the highest of the high when it comes to my phone's cell phone plan? Do I really need all of these subscriptions that I'm spending right now? Do I really need YouTube Premium? Am I actually using Spotify right now? These are essential questions you should genuinely ask yourself when you're actually going through this exercise. Okay, cool. So now let's go into the higher brackets over here. Now I've got between 10 to 20K a month. And you should only be spending 20% of your income, right? And I'm emphasizing this over here because here's where the danger zone comes in, right? Between this area over here, this is where some people tend to become like renters of a lifestyle. It is very common for people when they're in this actual bracket of income to start having the cashing in mindset because they're making a lot of money, they're making good money, but they have a materialistic mindset, and instead of focusing on compounding their money, they start to, for example, they get a penthouse. Maybe they might rent a car. Maybe they might go and rent some supercars, things of that sort. This is the danger zone. Between 5 to 40K a month, a lot of people like to cash in their money and forget about how they can compound their money and actually set themselves up for the future. And so again, remember, you should be following this rule. If you're making between 10 to 20K, only 20% of your income should be spent on your actual lifestyle. And then you should have a moderate mindset. Again, 20 to 40K a month, only 15% of your income should be going to your lifestyle. Again, moderate mindset. And then 40K plus, And the reason why I did 40K plus is because when you're at that point, you should have the 10% mindset. After making 40K per month, you're spending 4K a month on your actual lifestyle. That is enough to operate. And as you keep going further and further, it's really a gauge on yourself on how much you should technically be spending on your actual lifestyle. When you're at this point, when you're at that 40K plus, you should not be spending more than 10% of your income on your actual lifestyle, allowing a tremendous amount of room for yourself to actually grow and become successful and wealthy, right? There's a big difference between income and wealthy people, real wealthy people. Because as said in the Millionaire Next Door, there are a lot of people right now that are living paycheck to paycheck. They're in this category over here. They're in this actual category. They might be making 10K a month, 20K a month, 30K a month. Even doctors making really good money, but a lot of these people are almost on the verge of poverty, on the verge of being in the lower class section because they spend so much money on their lifestyle, on that materialism. So I'm hoping that you're not that kind of person right now. And if you are, that really sets yourself so much opportunity to reduce your expenses, reduce your lifestyle, and really genuinely ask yourself, do I really need this thing right now? And so if you really have that problem right now, read the book Essentialism. Another thing I kind of wanted to reference right now is inside of the book of The Richest Man in Babylon. Those that are wealthy understand how to budget, and especially they budgeted when they were very, very young. When it comes to the infants of their financial situation, when they were young, they were focused on budgeting. Now, here's my mindset on budgeting. If you like budgeting, if you understand how to budget, if you enjoy the process of budgeting, go ahead and do that. But here's the other method that is also listed inside of the Millionaire Next Door, which a lot of multimillionaires actually use when it comes to budgeting. They do this thing called the pay yourself first strategy. So say, for example, you're making between 5K a month, right? You're spending, you're making 5K a month, and you can only spend 50% of your lifestyle right now. You've got 2.5K available for you to spend on your lifestyle. What are you going to do first? The number one thing that you want to do when you're in this red zone over here is thinking, where can I put my money so that I can get a return on investment? And so let me just give you the mindset that a wealthy person has the moment that they get paid. The moment that they get paid, they take that money and as much as they possibly can out of their allocation, and they put that straight into assets. They put that straight into their investments. They put that straight into the things that will make them more money. So they do this thing called a pay yourself first strategy. They put all that money aside, right? So for example, you got 2.5K on one side, 2.5K on the other side. The 2.5K that is allocated for saving, investing, and blah, 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 you put it straight into things such as your assets. So you're really limiting yourself to make sure that you're following that 50% rule. And then whenever you want, you can spend your money on the rest of your actual lifestyle. But it's very important to have that pay yourself first mindset. You also want to avoid doing this thing such as becoming a homeless person. And I kind of characterize it becoming a homeless person because you might have such an extreme mindset on limiting your expenses. There is a point where you limit your mindset so much you actually start losing on benefits when it comes to getting on that next income gap. And I'll give you a quick little example. I had a client of mine that used to be in debt, and he used to be in a ton of debt, and he had that mindset of becoming wealthy. And so I showed him this chart, and he was like, okay, cool, I need to limit my expenses, I gotta limit all this stuff, I gotta basically just focus on my future and focus on putting that income straight into assets. And so what he did is that he did not go to any haircuts. He stopped going to the gym. He stopped spending on all of those extreme lifestyle things, but he was having a hard time scaling his income. He was having a hard time going from 2K a month to 10K a month to 20K a month. And ask yourself why. Because he was not doing the basics, such as getting a haircut, such as going to the gym, such as maybe investing a bit of your money, maybe spending $10 more, $20 more, $50 more on a better gym so that you can have more wellness, so that you can feel better. Because end of the day, in order for you to make those income jumps, you have to be optimized. You have to be healthy with high amounts of energy so you can go from this income gap to this income gap, and this income gap from this income gap. Because especially when you're in those low income areas, you have to have a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and ready to pounce at something. So let me give you some final advice if you're in the red zone over here, as well as if you're in this green zone over here. So my number one advice, if you're in the red zone, is honestly, with complete honesty, just get a job. Get a job and maximize that. And once you pass 5K a month, then start considering potentially, should I start a business? Should I start this side hustle? Should I maybe continue to get better jobs and level up inside of the corporate world? Ideally, that's really not the best kind of option to do. Starting your own business is always the best alternative. But that's pretty much it. You should be very frugal. You should be kind of limiting your expenses. Potentially consider living with your parents at that point until you get into the green zone. So here's my advice if you're in the green zone right now. Number one reason why people in the green zone leave the green zone is because they have over leveraged themselves. They spend too much of their money, too much of their income on their lifestyle, and that is what leads them to go back into the lower income category. You'd rather just focus on limiting your expenses and maximizing your net worth on the other hand. Another recommendation I've got over here is that if you're in the green zone, you should be doing things such as going to better gyms, going to luxury gyms, going and spending a bit more on your health so that you are optimized and ready to scale your business. Because right now, in this zone over here, if you're in this zone, your income is almost highly dependent on your performance. So you need to have high performance, especially when you're in this zone, making sure that you're completely optimized. Not spending 50 hours of your time at the gym, but being healthy, eating the right foods, eating the right stuff so that you can focus your energy and time on your work ultimately.